This week's Women in Sport focus will look at the role played by the CEO of Paralympics Ireland, Miriam Malone. Miriam's been in that position since 2017 and is currently working on leading Paralympics Ireland, Team Ireland, to the 2020 Paralympic Games, which take place in August 2021 in Tokyo. So, Miriam, you're very welcome, first of all.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
So, before we talk about a lot of the other issues for women in sport, you have a very particular set of trials ahead of you as you look to steer the Irish team towards success at the postponed games. So how has that period been for you, and what was it like making that adjustment from 2020 to 2021?
I think the biggest adjustment when the games were postponed was probably on the side of the athletes who had really geared up for and planned to be at their peak right at that particular time at the games. So definitely the biggest challenge and adjustment was on the side of the athletes. And from our perspective, in terms of the planning and administration around the games, uh, the staff team were great. They all immediately jumped into kind of a management and shift mode, if that makes sense. So to be able to adjust plans and keep communication up with our stakeholders, particularly our athletes and our coaching staff, and make sure that everyone was facilitated to continue training until we had a clearer picture of when the games were coming ahead. And then I suppose the carrot or the momentum is all leading forward now to a games in 2021, which is really exciting to look forward to now after a very tough time over the last number of months as we adapt to various conditions and I suppose different restrictions around COVID-19.
You have a great and rich history of working in sport. You've worked in a lot of different areas between local sports partnerships, the Special Olympics in one of the big three sports, and now in Paralympics Ireland. During that time, is the is this the biggest challenge that you faced?
Oh, good question. I think this is unprecedented. To have something like a virus or a pandemic impact so much, literally across the world. So absolutely, this is unprecedented. I haven't dealt with the adaptations needed to this level that's global up to this point.
So, and as I mentioned, you've had a rich career. You started out, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but in a local sports partnership. Um, would you have seen back then, if you have now talked to you back then, would you have seen the breadth and the impact of the women in sport movement that took off recently, really in the last 4 or 5 years, particularly with the 20 by 20 campaign? Could you have seen it become what it is, and what impact has it made since your career began in sport back in the sports partnership?
So I, the women in sport focus has been really positive in the last number of years. And back at the time when you're making me feel old now with all the different sports pieces in there. But back when I was working in the local sports partnership, one of the key elements to the local sports partnership role for me was in Kilkenny. And that was really looking to increase participation across the board for everybody. And at that time, the levels and the percentages of female participation in sport was quite a bit lower than male participation. So the drive to increase participation overall did mean focusing on particular target groups and target areas and target sports. And so you can see now as we progress forward how the likes of the Women in Sport campaign and the 2020 campaign and ones like that that have put a focus on that have really made a big impact when you see the numbers in the Irish Sports Monitor of the percentages of female participation, and not just in participation activities, but also across the board in volunteering and in working in administration in sport also, which is really, really good to see.
And that women in sport campaign, the 20 by 20 campaign that has been so successful, it tends possibly to target the athletes and participants in sport, and it's had a great impact in allowing young girls to see those role models. But is it equally as important to portray the administrative side of sport, and to have more female sports administrators at high level that can act as a similar role model to girls and to women who would be interested in taking on similar roles in the future?
Absolutely. I think it's important to have those role models across society in general, so that every young child, be male, whether that be male or female, sees an opportunity for them, and a potential for them to progress into whatever area they want to go into. So in sport, if you're a player or an athlete, you want to see your role models in as a player or an athlete. But if that's not for you, and if, like me, you try your best at that side, but you might not be in that area of high performance, you look at other avenues then, like I did through sports administration. But likewise, it's really important then for everyone to have role models within that sphere too. And I think across the board, there are certainly many, many more role models across sport now, particularly up in the higher levels of sport, than we would have seen a number of years ago.
As a role model, well, I suppose the first question really is, as the CEO of a national sporting and an international sporting organization, do you see yourself as a role model?
I suppose so. I think um, yeah, yes is the answer. I think I have to take that responsibility on. I don't often think about it that way, I suppose, or when I went into the role, and may not have thought about it that way. But yes, I do think it's really important to to act in a way, or to be a role model for others who may want to strive towards that route, and to ensure to portray that in a positive realm, if you like, or in a positive way, so that people can see that this is achievable. And it's not a sometimes, if you look at the likes of role models for in athletes, they are excellent athletes and they're at very, very high performance and top level, and that may not just be attainable for everybody. So I suppose I would represent maybe a different perspective, that through work and dedication and commitment, that someone can make it to a high level in a sports administration perspective as well, and that's achievable to anybody. So I suppose I would see myself as a role model, but not on an elite pedestal, but as someone that has made their way up through a system that anybody can do.
When you were coming through that system, what did you see as the biggest challenges that you would have faced as you would have progressed through your career? What challenges did you face at that time? And are those challenges something that would still exist for another girl or woman making their way in sports administration?
I think it was interesting. So depending on what sport or what type of role that I was in, I suppose from my experience coming through, it was quite varied, as to how what may be challenging, or what may not be. In general, because there were not as many females involved, they were just the statistics at the time. It at times felt a little bit like a battle, so that you're um, trying to fight to prove your validity, if that makes sense, and maybe not your validity. That's probably the incorrect word, but you're trying to ensure that you excel in all the areas that you work in, and in 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 some areas you probably needed to do even better to be recognized at an equal basis, if that makes sense. So whether that was um, put on me myself, or whether that was externally, it felt that way, I suppose, as you move through. In order to um, get the recognition, you had to just be better each time to get that equal recognition. So that in one way may have driven me a little bit more to make sure to excel. So if you take on something, take it on to a high level, and constantly try to just do your best, and achieve as high as possible in each of those roles or areas. Things coming through, it was quite varied, as to how what may be challenging, or what may not be. In general, because there were not as many females involved, they were just the statistics at the time. It at times felt a little bit like a battle, so that you're trying to fight to prove your validity, if that makes sense. And maybe not your validity, that's probably the incorrect word, but you're trying to ensure that you excel in all the areas that you work in. And in some areas you probably needed to do even better to be recognized at an equal basis, if that makes sense. So whether that was put on me myself, or whether that was externally, it felt that way, I suppose, as you moved through. In order to get the recognition, you had to just be better each time to get that equal recognition. So that in one way may have driven me a little bit more to make sure to excel. So if you take on something, take it on to a high level, and constantly try to just do your best and achieve as high as possible in each of those roles or areas.
And do you think that same pressure exists for someone beginning their career in sports administration? Is that same pressure there to outperform male colleagues, or to feel like you must be the absolute pinnacle of your abilities at all times? Is that still something that women feel in sports administration?
I would hope not to the same extent. I wouldn't say it is eradicated. I wouldn't say it's, plain sailing and there's always kind of an equal opportunity the whole way through. But I would certainly hope, and I would say from what I see, certainly not to the same extent, that people are absolutely much more open. The same challenges exist for male and female. So it's about the focus is probably a little bit more on performance now, as opposed to gender or trying to prove that ability. So I would hope that it's definitely changed. I see way more opportunities, and I think there are many more like-minded people having come through that system that are open to ensuring that it's ability focused and that it's performance focused.
And then so if somebody, a woman, is to enter sports administration at an entry level position, and they aspire to reach the level that you've reached, and even higher levels as well, what advice would you have for that girl, that woman, as they are beginning their path towards their career?
I would say believe in yourself and take those steps and take those risks. And when you do take on a role, do your very best to, commit to doing it very well. And then your ability and your work will speak for itself. So, and also, I think when I say the believe in yourself and have that confidence in your ability, I think sometimes we might not feel or believe or have confidence that we're doing it as well as we can, but actually, in actual fact, most people are doing it even better than they believe themselves. So I think it's really important to trust that your best is good. Your best is good enough. So work through that and let your ability speak for itself.
At those times of stress and pressure, and you've talked about the pressure to be at your best at all times, how do you reassure yourself that what you're doing is right, and that the level that you're operating at is the correct level, and that you're fulfilling all your own standards? What do you do to give yourself that reassurance?
That's a really hard question. I still have my doubts all the time, so I don't know that ever goes away. I don't know of anybody that is that strong and confident that they believe always that they're correct or that that's right. But I think so. So yes, I still have my doubts all the time, but I do various different things to try and I suppose make sure that I'm on the right track, and whether that be checking in with colleagues and bouncing things off them, or trusting, I suppose, and revisiting. I think it's important to trust and revisit the successes that people have had too. So sometimes we move very quickly on and I do this myself as well. We might move very quickly on from a success and go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But actually, it's worth taking a moment to reflect on when some of the big achievements that have happened came through, and why they came through and how they came through, because none of those happened by accident. All those big achievements and successes happen because of the thought and planning and preparation and the teamwork involved in making that happen. So that's probably one that I would look at times. If you're starting to feel a bit shaky at times, you look back on, hang on a second, look at what we've done as a team before. We can do this, and then look at how you achieve that, and then apply that to your next project, whatever that may be.
Of all the different possibilities there are for somebody looking forward to their future career, sport is one of them. What would you say to somebody who's looking at a possibility of working in sport, and obviously a girl who's filling out their CEO forms, or whatever it is, they were talking to their career guidance. What would you say to somebody like that? What reasons would you tell them to come and work in sport?
I would definitely say go for it. I think it provides huge opportunity and a wide breadth of um, opportunities in different areas to work with in sport. So one of the things that I found, a lot of people enter into sport because they're very involved and passionate about the participation element or the coaching element of sport. So likewise, when I came in, that's what I was doing. I was coaching. I was teaching swimming and teaching all sorts of aerobics and all sorts of sports activities. And then I found as progression came, as I many of the roles that I went into, you start at one level and can gradually progress. And that's a real positive thing about sports. There are opportunities when you start at entry level to take steps up along the way. And I think people who are willing to put that time and effort in to build up those steps for themselves will reap those rewards. So those steps are there and available. And as long as you put the work in, I suppose, to each step of the process, you will gradually find yourself progressing on up the ladder, if you like. The one thing to be conscious of, oftentimes it may move from the practical element into more administrative. So certainly in my day, back in my day, Derek, the promotions, if you like, were further away from the practical always. So I ended up, you go in because you love coaching or teaching children or whatever it is in sport and activity, and end up moving a little bit further and further away from that. So as long as you make that choice, knowingly, if that makes sense, and you're happy to go into that route, and then you're happy to ensure that participation and activity happens through some other element of your work, whether that be planning and strategy or something else. I think there's a huge wide breadth of activities, and now also, in fact, there's more steps for those in coaching and training as well that there probably weren't there before. So there's a wide breadth, and it's very rewarding. And it's once you have your passion about why you do that, whether that's getting people active or inclusion in sport, making sure that everybody with every ability has a chance to come through, what your passion is, and your work will drive that then for you. So I think it's a great area to go into.
Would I be right in saying, in terms, and you talk about it being a rewarding or profession, would I be right in saying that there are few careers or few areas that you can work in that you can see such a you know obvious example of you succeeding in your role through uh, an athlete progressing to a podium in your current role, or to representing their team on an international stage, and when you see somebody like that reach the pinnacle because of some effort that you've made, what does that do for you? How would you feel um, after seeing that success? Do you feel like you have a share in it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think the gold medal, if you like, or the reward lies absolutely and only with the athlete. So they're the one who swam that distance or ran that distance or played the team sport. So that achievement lies with them absolutely, and I wouldn't take away from that for the world. But I think there is a big support team all around every athlete that makes it to an event and makes it to the pinnacle of their career. And I think that everybody involved needs to acknowledge their role within that journey. And I think that is, for me, that's massive satisfaction. That whatever your role is, whether it's the family supporting the athlete coming through, whether it's a coach who's directly involved in coaching and working and training with an athlete, or if it's an administrative role that you're putting in place, making sure that there's budget and funding to get them to whatever they're trying to do. all of those roles are really important, and they all play a vital part in that journey for an athlete. So yes, while I wouldn't for a second dream of taking away any of the credit for an athlete getting a medal, I do feel that there's a huge wide team that are part of that success. And I think every team member deserves to share in that, deserves to feel some success for themselves when that happens as well. And I think it's really important. And I think I think they can justly feel that success and feel really pleased and happy and part of that journey that someone achieves to that level.
Now, I've asked you a few hard questions there, Miriam, and this is the last one, but it may be the hardest question because we're focusing on the area of women in sport, and we've been lucky in our focus through social media on our women in sport. We've got several great examples of our female athletes who are being role models and competing at the highest level. But for the women in sport movement, what's next? What does the future like in order to continue to provide opportunities to compete, firstly, and to become involved in the administration side? So, what's next for women in sport in Ireland?
I think there's a couple of things. I think the momentum is really positive. The support is very positive right now behind women in sport. I think there are a few things that are needed to keep that going. Um, the next generation of young people coming through and into sport, I expect that that will automatically bring more and more balance to that. I think the strong voices of people involved in sport now to try and ensure that the female sporting activities remain on the calendar and stay on the spotlight. That needs to continue. While it has been, while there has been a spot and has increased, it's still nowhere near the level that needs to be at. In order to help that happen, I think two things. As females, all females, other females need to support it also. So sometimes we could, you could say males are actually really strong and really good at supporting sport. So females need to back female sport as well, not just males. And secondly, I would say then, so we all need to get behind it, is what I'm saying. Secondly, then I think male role models supporting female sport are vital. So we have a lot of female voices who are talking about women's sports very important, and we all need to support that, and they're supporting each other, if that makes sense. It also needs to now combine with strong male voice, males who have who are already role models and have a strong voice as well, also backing that up and also providing that. There was a recent, at the wrap up for the 2020 20 by 20 campaign recently, and there were some very positive male voices. I know Brian O'Driscoll was on, and a couple of other people talking about how important it is, for example, for him that his daughter get the same opportunities as his son, for example. So we need more people to think about that from that perspective the whole way through, not just when they finish their career, but the whole way through as well.